So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Bill, and I think Bill's going to introduce other people on his team as well that will be presenting today. So Bill, the mic is yours.
Thank you, JW, and good morning, everyone. Looked at the list of participants, and I see a lot of familiar names. So hopefully a lot of this information is, things that you already were familiar with, but hopefully we'll also provide some more insights into kind of things that are changing and things that are forthcoming as well for you. So with me today, I've got Dr. Ashley Seaman, who's our Director of Analytics and Reporting for the system, as well as Elizabeth Stoddard, who's our Business Intelligence Analyst for the system. I'm going to focus my session on really looking at state performance measures. And Elizabeth, can you click on the next one? So first, I'll just give a little bit of overview of the team. We'll talk about current performance measures. We'll also talk about some recent changes and forthcoming change we have for our performance measures moving forward. And then I will hand things over to Ashley and Elizabeth, and they'll do a deeper dive as far as where we're at with analytics and reporting for our system. Thanks. Okay, so it's a little bit about us. We are here to try to help inform decisions, whether it's be at the system level or be at the college level. We're really trying to work with our data and access the information we have to kind of provide insights for our colleges. There's also other things we do as far as trying to inform our different processes, whether it be data collection, reporting, things related to our strategic initiatives. We do a lot of data sharing between state agencies, and we're also involved in multiple national initiatives that are really kind of more tied to student success. So we do have a small and mighty team. And you click on the next one for me. And I'll kind of go one by one with these. So we first is Patrick Callahan. He works a lot as far as our interfacing with our IT division. So as we have business requirements and so forth that we need our IT, he's kind of intermediary between us and them for a lot of those things. Next is Dr. Ashley Seaman. She oversees all of our analysts and reporting for our system. She was formerly in a role, she was our Director of Program Evaluation, but really the team has transitioned the past, I would say, 3 or 4 years from being we're now less focused on the research and analysis piece and much more focused on the analyst and reporting piece. So that's why you see a lot of these position titles are much more in the IT realm rather than kind of the, less so on the evaluation side. But really still our core focus is making sure that information is accessible for decision makers to make sure we're making the best decisions at a state level and a local level, especially tied to students and their success. We have Josh Douglas, who's our application system analyst. He does a lot of the background programming work that feeds into a lot of our dashboards and other data requirements that we work with. Elizabeth Stoddard, so all the beautiful dashboards that you see, we hired her, I guess, about 2 or 3 years ago. And her core focus has been building out our, really the visualization interface we have with the colleges, whether it be through our public-facing Tableau dashboards or our behind-the-scenes dashboards through Power BI. Katie Bow, she is our research specialist. You might hear about our career and college promise evaluation. We even had a nationwide symposium about 3-4 weeks ago, focused on dual enrollment programs across the country. And we have about over 500 participants there. So she's been kind of the core person leading that effort for our states. And then of course you have the weak link is me at the end, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Research and Performance Management. Next. All right, so there's a lot of confusion. I built this slide out for our CC Pro folks for a presentation probably 2 weeks ago. And a lot of times there's confusion as far as where does IT start and where does RPM end? So, or I say how we interface with IT. And we do not work under the IT division. We work in executive division. We're almost like a neutral body, but we do have a lot of dependencies, and IT has a lot of dependencies on us. So built this visualization out to kind of look at those things on top are things that are very much IT related. And you can see towards the bottom are things that are kind of really our core responsibilities. But everything in the middle is kind of a weird area where we probably have more influence on certain things than IT does and vice versa. But there are a lot of interdependencies between my team and IT. And you kind of see the bottom line there. You have state performance measures, research and analysis, policy evaluation, ad hoc data requests, analytical data views, and tableau dashboards. Those are solely really core responsibilities for the RPM team. Next. All right, so I'll do a deeper dive on state performance measures. And, once again, based on all the familiar names, hopefully this is nothing new to you. State performance measure report, that is our statewide accountability report, really kind of holding the college accountable. And we also leverage it to kind of help inform the public as far as how our college is doing, especially as it relates to student success. It is the basis which we have state appropriations for $24 million in performance funding for. And we have 7 measures. We have basic skills student progress. We have a measure focused on success rate in college level English, also college level math. We have first year progression, curriculum student completion, license certification passing rate, and we have a college transfer performance measure. So I'll kind of briefly go through each one of these. And I will, since we have a smaller group, if there's any questions related to any of these measures as I go through them, I'll pause and see if there's any questions. And if there's not, we can kind of push forward. Okay, first one, our basic skills progress measure. So I did see there are some CCR folks here from the colleges. So this is definitely focused on your area. And this is where we look at students within an academic year or program year. We look at their peers participation. For the most part, a student has about 1 pop. Sometimes we'll see 2. Very once in a while, we'll see 3 peers participation during a year. But primarily, a student has a peer participation. And we look at within that program year, do they make an EFL gain through a pre and post test? Do they accumulate adult high school credits? Do they transition over to post-secondary? Do they complete their high school equivalency test successfully? Or are they an adult high school graduate? So we look across all these areas, and if a student reaches one of those benchmarks, we consider them a success within this measure. So it's looking at all of those peer participations. Was there a success tied to that, yes or no? So any questions related to the basic skills student progress measure?
Hey, Bill, this is Jonathan Loss.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, so I'm relatively new to CCR, gotten a lot of that under my area of responsibility now at CVCC as well. And it's interesting to me how this is calculated. Seems to be kind of counter to FTE. Like, we want to increase our FTE, yet at the same time, we want to keep this percentage really high. So we can keep this percentage really high if we actually keep our denominator really low, right? If we have fewer students with POPs, it's more likely that we get more of them and concentrate on them to get MSGs and get a higher percentage, and especially meeting that federal level, what it's like 43% or something this year is kind of what we're looking at. How do you see those working? They seem kind of counter to me. If we wanted to keep this percentage really high, but also increase FTE?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. One of the things that, is not in here is who's in our denominator. So we only look at those who reach participant status, which is 12 hours. So if we're just getting students in and out and not reaching those 12 hours, they're not included in this metric. So we do make sure we at least have that threshold there, which is, in this measure, is the federal measure. But I share your concern. We have seen throughout history, we've seen a lot of students that are accumulating a lot of hours within this, and where they're not making gains. So that is a pretty big concern. We did do a pretty extensive report about, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago, focused on really looking at doing a deeper dive within, basic skills and student progress and so forth. I think it's still on our website. But I think as long as we're aligned with the federal measure, we're going to have those, those counter concerns. But I think, one of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit in the state performance measure review is that, this measure will be up for some conversation within the next 3 years and to see if this measure is best serving our students. So we very much could see ourselves transition away from this measure 3 years from now.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in here, Bill. I think that it's also important to note that a student who receives a gain, you don't have to stop serving that student. We actually expect that providers will continue to serve that student, especially if they haven't progressed all the way through to achieving that high school equivalency or transitioning into post-secondary. So some of these gains are terminal, but most of our gains come from pre and post testing. And we want to see continued progress, while the federal performance measure only focuses on the first gain. And once you hit that gain, you're counted as a success for the federal. It doesn't mean that the students can't continue on in your program and continue to make progress. So I think that's just an important consideration as well.
Thank you both, Bill and Ashley. I was just, as I'm thinking about this, just the potential for colleges even to play games with this, to the point like, well, this student we don't think is likely to show progress, so let's make, if they're not coming back, we won't even encourage them to come back because they're at 10 and they don't count against us in the denominators yet. So it just seems really interesting to me how these could be competing against one another, these measurements. So anyway, thank you for the background and the explanation, and thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions related to this measure? All right, let's transition to the next one. Next one is when we're really shifting more to our curriculum student side. So we track student cohorts, and one of the measures we track student cohorts is with the successful completion of college level English. We give students 3 years after their first enrollment with post-secondary enrollment during the fall semester. And within those 3 years, they successfully complete with a C or better a college level English course. And we do limit this denominator. It's not all of our first time cohort students. It's only those that are either in a dual enrollment pathway program or are an associate degree program during that first fall semester. So if you have certificate or diploma seeking students or TCO students, they're not included here. We're only including those areas where really a college level English is an important component for a student to be successful within that area of study. Any questions on this one? And I think one question we get a lot about this in the English and the next one, the math measure, is why 3 years? That was based on our last review. The last review, we heard a lot of concerns from colleges around early college students that 2 years was not long enough. So we did make concessions during the last review to expand from 2 to 3 years for this measure. Okay. Not hearing any, let's go to the next one. So these are pretty much duplicative measures outside the fact that we're looking at math. So here we're looking at within a student's first 3 years, did they successfully complete a college level math course? And I guess another question we got with around these two measures too is it's not looking at those who attempt, it's looking at the entire cohort. So if a student does not attempt a college level English or math course, they're non-successes. So you have to attempt and successfully complete that college level coursework to be successful within this measure. Any questions on the math? Okay, next one. A first year progression, this is pretty much just a persistence measure. So we look at a first time fall credential seeking students. This is your students that are in program studies or A, Ds, or Cs, so associate diploma or certificate seeking students. And looking at, are they still enrolled in post-secondary the subsequent fall semester? So this could be enrollment at your college, it could be another college, it could be a university. So it's looking at really post-secondary persistence from the fall when they first step on foot on a college campus, which is yours, and looking at them transitioning and still being enrolled in post-secondary the subsequent fall semester. questions on first year progression? And I guess another question we get to is, why we call this first year progression? Why don't we call it like first year persistence? And, one of the things that's kind of tough for a lot of these measured titles, that all these measured titles are approved by the legislature. So in order for us to actually make changes to the actual titles, it does have to go through a strenuous process, and there's also a possibility that they might get turned down. So we try to make sure that the measure to either the descriptions or the methodologies are aligned with that title, but the title may not necessarily be the best thing as far as describing the measure themselves. So that's why you might see, certain things where you might think progression might be like credit hour accumulation when it's not really. For this, we're looking at persistence from fall to fall. Next one. Okay, curriculum completion. This is our longer term success rate. This used to be a 6-year measure. The last review 3 years ago, we thought the 6-year measure was way too long. That really we want to look at more, success rates more shorter term, because we know that really there's not a whole lot of gains as far as percentages, from a 4-year rate to a 6-year rate. So we decided to kind of pull it back to a 4-year rate. And this is looking at, of your first-time students, what percent either graduated, and this could be graduate from your college, from another college, who either transferred, either graduated, transferred to a university, or also are they still enrolled in that 4th academic year and have successfully completed 42 non-development hours. So those students are on their way to completion, are still enrolled at your institution. They are still included as successes within this measure. Any questions about curriculum completion? All right, let's go next one. Okay, license certification passing rate. A couple of years ago, we transitioned this from an aggregate success or pass rate to an index score. So if you look in our dashboards for this, you'll see various success rates across all the different licensure exams. And we shifted to an index score because we know that really the success rates on some of the different licensure exams are much higher on average than other ones. So we want to try to level things out across the different exams and index each one of them based on your institution's success rate compared to the statewide success rates for each exam, and then aggregating those results up to really more of a institutional index score, taking into account each of those individual success rates. So we also weight these different exams based on their associated tier levels, associated with the FTE levels. So there is, this is probably the more complicated one we have right now as far as we index it, and we also weight those successes based on the actual program tier. Any questions here?
Hey, Bill, I did have a question. Is there a particular reason that first-time test takers are emphasized?
Yeah, so that's a question we get a lot. Every review we get, we're always asking why first time. And the reason we do first time, I think we have about maybe 25 different exams we look at. And that is kind of like the common metric that is across all those different exams. Not everybody, collects information on, non-first time success rates, but everybody collects information on the first time success rate. We've been having a conversation about how we could potentially expand, at least from an impact perspective, of including those that might be taking their second or third. But the main reason why we focus specifically on the first time is because that is the consistent metric across all the exams.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this one?
Can you discuss the weights a little bit more in the
Yeah.
tiers?
Sure. So if we think about our FTE funding model, we had the tier, the 1As, the 1Bs, the 2s, and the 3s. And those are based on the course prefixes for each of those, different associated courses for those course subjects. So we align the actual course prefixes with each of these different exams. And, you know, as you know, like based on the different tiers, you could have something that's worth 30% more from FTE weight perspective than another course. I think it's like 15% as you go to 1B, and I think it's like 30% more when you go to 1A compared to tier 2. So that's how, you know, we weight them the same way. So if your success rates associated with, let's say, an allied health area licensure exam is probably going to be we weight 30% more than we would, let's say, a cosmetology exam. So hopefully that kind of provides makes a little bit more sense as far as when we're assessing the outcomes and how much weight we're giving each of the exams when we aggregate those exams together.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Let's go to our last one, is college transfer performance. This is also kind of similar to our post-secondary persistence measure. So this is looking at college transfer performance. For this one, this used to be years ago, looking at the first year GPA of students, but there was interest from the last review to kind of focus more on persistence. So now we're looking at, of the individuals who have accumulated 30 or more hours or an associate degree at your institution, who go on to transfer to a four-year institution, what percentage are still enrolled the subsequent fall semester. So it's looking at really that university persistence after they transfer on to a university. So it's a fall-to-fall persistence for those who go on to university from your institution. Any questions on that one? Okay. So that's the end of our performance measures. So that's the 7 measures. Any questions going back to any of those measures that you'd be interested before we kind of talk more about performance measures going forward?
Bill, I have one question that might interest the participants, and that is, what's the procedure for making adjustments and changes, and what's the timeline for that kind of thing if we're looking at making a recommendation to make an adjustment to one of the measures?
So it's too late. Now I'm kind of kidding. So that's what we're going to talk about next, is that we have a 3-year cycle, and we'll go through this real quick. So we just completed our last 3-year cycle. So if you can click on the next slide for me. So I think Jado is actually probably setting this up for us, but since 2011, we review these measures every 3 years. And, you know, it's a committee that's established, appointed by the system president. And for the most part, this is a very much a college-driven process. You know, a lot of folks, system office might be more facilitators, might provide input, but when you start looking at the membership of the committee, it's primarily made up of peers within your institutions. So we review this every 3 years. We look at the different metrics and decide, you know, are these the right measures for us to, you know, to assess moving forward for the next 3 years. You know, looking at the 14, 15, and 17, 8 reviews, there were some changes. We talked about some of those changes that happened, and, you know, did have impact on some of the measures and their methodologies. And this past about a year ago, we established our most recent committee, which was focused on the 2021 review. Next. So you can see all the different representatives. So if you don't like the things you're going to hear, you can call your peers and yell at them for the input they provide. But you see a lot of college folks here, especially representing different areas, whether it be, you know, from career and college readiness to curriculum to workforce CE to IE, and also a multiple, I think we have 3 college presidents also on this committee, kind of provide input as far as what we should be focused on and what kind of changes need to be made moving forward to our state performance measures. Next slide. So the committee really came forward with a little bit different focus than what we've seen historically. One of the things that they focused on was implementation across a 3-year time frame. Historically, we made changes to methodologies or changes to the actual descriptions of the different measures that really weren't implemented all at one time. But this one was a little different because really there were no changes to core methodology. And there was actually, one recommendation was actually started in 2021, which we'll talk about a little as well. Main recommendations that we're phasing in for this forthcoming report and also the 2023 report, and just kind of looking there as far as timeframes for endorsement. President Association endorsed these changes in May of this year, and then it's followed up by the board approval in July of this year. Next. All right, so one of the things that we adopted, or really the only thing we adopted for change in the 2020 report, was resetting baselines and excellence levels annually. And this was a pretty big shift because historically we looked at really trend data. We looked at multiple years of success rates, and we looked at different performances across colleges. And then we went ahead and set baselines and excellence levels for 3 years. So they remained consistent. They did not change. And we actually ran into trouble with that as far as our funding model ran into changes. And you also think about COVID and the impact COVID has had on our success rates as well. So, I use basic skills as our example. We had a huge drop in our basic skills success rate last year. And if we'd gone back and used the old baselines and excellence levels, we would have had, I think, maybe about 8 to 10 of our colleges would have fallen below the baselines. So starting with the 2020 report, we went ahead and reset everything based on the most recent results. So every year you will see moving forward different baselines and excellence levels from one year to the next. We do get questions, well, isn't that a moving target? And the answer is yes, it is a moving target. It always changes, and it's always based on the most recent results, and you're always being compared to your peer institutions for those measures. Okay. We'll go a little bit more detail at the 2022 report in a little bit, but big changes for the upcoming report is that we're indexing everything on a 1.0 scale. We're still going to be showing your success rates and disaggregating success rates by percentages, but really kind of your landing page or what you'll see in the report is focused on really a 1.0 scale. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. We were also, for the 2023 report, we're decoupling impact from quality and get a little more detail of that too. And also we'll talk a little later about the index and Pell and non-Pell. Okay, next. 2023 report. So hopefully many of you have seen the standard grade memo that went out this summer from Dr. Gold, focused on standardizing our grading scheme within CE. And the reason why this is important is that we're trying to make sure we can measure success in our workforce CE programs and try to have some kind of comparison to the completion of our curriculum programs. So that's why that grading schemes was an important component. But we really won't be leveraging those for state performance measure results until the 2023 report. And the reason being is that we're going to need at least 1 year data to do that. And that's why I kind of like for 2023, that's when we're really looking at that equivalency of the CE programs with some of the curriculum programs. Okay, next. All right, some more for 2023. We're going to talk about the index and the Pell, but we're also thinking too about in the future indexing other characteristics, including race, ethnicity, sex, and other things where we see big, really differences in our success rates by different student characteristics. Also, we're going to be considering weighting of outputs across different measures. So within some of our measures, there's multiple ways you can be successful. If you think about just our curriculum success measure, we include transfer, we include graduation, we include persistence, all as successes. But one of the things that we're going to question is, should we count transfer and a graduation as equal? Should we calculate graduating with an associate versus graduating with their certificate as equals? So thinking about those how we weigh those outputs across those measures and how that ties to performance funding. Another thing we're looking at is mentioned before, as far as our basic skills measure, do we need to make recommendations there and have a big focus on what that measure should be moving forward to make sure that we are really creating incentives for students to progress in the basic skills through the basic skills program, not just within. And also thinking too about, we mentioned this as well, as far as can we think about licensure certification pathways not just on first attempt, but can we count successes that go beyond that first attempt as well? Okay, next. All right, so a little bit deeper dive on what's going to be changed in the 2022 report. So I mentioned before 2, 3, and 4. We'll go to the next slide. We'll talk about first about 2. Okay. All right, so one of the things we heard from college presidents is that there was concerns about what is a success, what's non-success, and as they're communicating these success rates to different leaders, like their trustees or other leaders in the community, that you may see something like basic skills at 34%. How can I say that 40% in basic skills progress is a good thing, but 80% for transfer performance is a bad thing? So it's really helped college as far as really understanding and identifying areas of strengths and weaknesses. We're going to scale everything on a 1.0 scale, like we do with licensure pass rate. And this is a very easy index, and it's not complex at all. All we do for the index is we take your success rate and divide it by the state institutional average. So let's say we're looking at something that has a state, let's just make up and say that the curriculum completion measure is 50% across our institutions as an average. If your institution is at 55%, you would have a 1.1 index score. So you're just taking your 55 and divide by 50. If you did the opposite and you're at 45 and the state's at 50, once again, you take that 45 and divide by 50 and your index score is at a 0.9. So 1.0, if you're really reflects that if you're the same as a state average, but you can go above or below depending on how your success rates compared to the statewide average. All right, so go next screen. So once again, just 1.0 scale makes it easier to communicate, and also allows us to index multiple segments of our students by indexing. Okay, so it's like we currently do with licensure, where we have different licensure exams. It's much easier for us to aggregate index scores together into one overall global success rate, rather than trying to aggregate together completion rates. Next. So this is just an example once again, just showing we're not going to be really kind of on the front end of either the report or even some of our dashboards. You won't see on the front end these success rates. You'll be seeing things more on kind of that 1.0 scale. Okay, next. All right. So next thing, as far as moving forward, recommendation 3. We've heard a lot about impact is tied to student cohorts. So when we look at each of our different methodologies associated with state performance measures, they're all based on a cohort of students that we're tracking over time. And if we think about a first-time cohort of students, that is what we kind of tie. So we think about impact and we think about quality. So I didn't want to go in detail too much about our performance funding model, but there's really 2 components for it. One is based on your success rate, which is your quality funding piece, but it's also an impact component as well, which is based on your number of successes. And really right now we're thinking about with recommendation 3 is we're decoupling impact versus quality. So moving forward, we don't necessarily need to associate impact with the actual number of successes that we had with that cohort we're tracking. We can actually have something more reflective of something that's currently happening. So I'll use this example here. So if we think about our curriculum completion measure, that is a measure that looks at across 4 years and looks at a cohort started 4 years ago. So the quality piece, that's always going to look at the success rate of the cohort, but something that we have more flexibility now moving forward is that we may base the actual count of successes not on that cohort, but maybe actually the most recent year number of successes that we had for all students and not just a first-time cohort. Okay. Next one. All right, so Some of the standards talked about before is that, quality is still tied to performance measure methodology. Impact is based on, not necessarily based on a numerator quality measure. And also, same thing here as far as it's not associated with the cohort and number of success within that cohort, but it can be, we can expand upon that and look at a more recent time frame and a more global population of students. So something else that, moving forward that we're addressing recommendation 4 is that we know that success rates differ across different student groups. And where we're starting out here is looking at students who receive Pell and students who don't receive Pell. And looking here is looking at the success rates within 4 measures. And these measures are the college level English measure, the college level math measure, first year progression measure, and curriculum completion measure. And you see there's pretty stark differences in those success rates for those students who receive Pell, which is on the left-hand side of dark blue bar, versus the gray bar, which is those students who don't receive Pell. So next slide, please. So really our focus here is really kind of thinking about from an equity perspective too, and trying to really kind of do more leveling across different student groups. So like we were talking before about indexing by different licensure exam, now we're talking about indexing based on student characteristics. So for Pell, non-Pell, you're actually going to be indexed on what is your success rate for Pell students. And then separately looking at what is your index for non-Pell students, and then aggregating those successes together to create one index score. All right, next. All right, so that kind of runs through with more focus on what's forthcoming in the 2022 report. Any questions about performance measures overall? And I guess I should open up chat. JW, was there anything in chat that?
No questions in the chat, just a couple of comments of enjoying the ideas of the indexing and the value of degrees and so forth. So are there any questions or comments? Feel free to unmute your microphone or put something in the chat.
Hey, so I'll just thank you, Bill, for sharing all this. I'm always interested in the data and how it all works. And so Ashley too, and your entire team, thanks for the work you guys do and helping us understand what we're doing well, where we can improve, and different ways to think about measuring our success. So just grateful for the opportunity to continue to learn more about it. So thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Anything else? Well, not hearing anything, I'm going to need to transition over to state board, but I brought, like I said before, I brought my smart people here for my team to do the rest of this presentation, and it's really kind of the area in which they're kind of provide oversight and do really the hard work from day-to-day perspective to really provide you guys with more insights at your colleges, and they kind of tell you more about what they're doing, the roadmap moving forward. And so I'll hand things over to Ashley and Elizabeth.
Great, thank you, Bill. All right, so as Bill mentioned, I'm Ashley Seaman, the Director of Analytics and Reporting, and I'm here today with Elizabeth Stoddard, our Business Intelligence Analyst, and we're going to talk to you about our Analytics and Reporting roadmap and how you can access some of the resources that are available to you. So the first thing we want to make sure everyone is aware of is our public-facing dashboards. I've put the link here at the bottom of the slide. You can follow along if you'd like. You can go ahead and access that. It is publicly available on Tableau Public. I often just get to it by going to Google or any search engine and typing in NCCCS dashboards, and it'll take you right to our dashboard page on the first link. Thanks, Elizabeth. Can you switch to the next slide? So just a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish with these dashboards. back in 2016, when I joined the system office, we were using a different dashboarding tool. We were using SAS as our primary dashboarding tool, and the only dashboards that we had available were related to the performance measures. Since that time, we decided that we wanted to shift to Tableau Public as our platform and expand our dashboard roadmap. In 2019, we hired Elizabeth to come on board and help us realize that vision. And a lot of the work that we've accomplished today has been due to her great efforts. In this space, we really thought a lot as we launched this roadmap about what our goals were. And with our Tableau Public space, we wanted to first and foremost make sure that we were delivering dashboards that had the lowest barrier to access. We wanted to make sure that anyone on a campus could easily find this information. It would be available at their fingertips and easy to use. Whereas prior to having the Tableau dashboards, information that was submitted to the system office was only accessible behind a login through an older platform called Business Objects. So we wanted to address that concern, that kind of access to the dashboarding space by making as much information as possible publicly available, while of course protecting student confidentiality and applying good suppression rules to make sure that student privacy is protected. Another big value that I think our team offers with these dashboards is that we employ a consistent methodology across the 58. So oftentimes you would see, prior to this rollout, you would see colleges reporting different numbers for even just basic metrics like first year retention or even just enrollment numbers. So we wanted to make sure that we were applying a consistent methodology and that we were making it very transparent how we were getting the information that we use for our dashboards. All of the information that we publish is based on the flat files that are submitted to the system office in your CCSR, which formerly was called the CRPFA report. This is your curriculum registration report. Your CE data card, which includes your CE and basic skills enrollment information for students in their courses. We now get a graduation extract that we use as an input into these dashboards, tuition remission, staff, and our monthly basic skills. Those are our primary sources of information that we use for the dashboards. So applying that consistent methodology really increases the power of these dashboards because we're able to give you peer analysis. And Elizabeth will talk a little bit more about some of our peer analysis that we've made available. So that we've received really good feedback on from colleges. We want to make these interactive. We want to give you as much functionality as possible so that you can answer your most important questions and so that you can see the data in a variety of ways. We give you point in time as well as longitudinal. Most of our dashboards start off with an institution view versus the system view. And then, as I mentioned before, we also have several dashboards that are just focused on doing a deeper dive in peer analysis. These dashboards are updated as we get updates to the data at the system office. Most of our dashboards are updated on a term basis, so 3 times per year, with some of our dashboards being updated monthly. Our graduation data comes in monthly, as well as our basic skills CCR data that also comes in monthly. So as the data comes into the system office, we run through all of our processes and update these dashboards. The exciting thing is that we are now getting nightly data. So we have started to produce some dashboards that are built off of the nightly data. It's still a bit messy and challenging to work with, but we're really excited about the potential here. We're working with an enrollment management committee to do daily FTE and enrollment estimate dashboards. Our hope is that we'll be releasing that sometime in the spring. We have several colleges who are working with us on validating the methodology and consulting on the design. So this new nightly data not only gives us more opportunities to give you more near-time insights, it also gives us opportunities to add additional fields that we haven't had access to in the past. So we've been working with our data governance committee and our data warehouse team to think about what are the additional fields that we need to bring up to the system office that we haven't been able to access because they haven't been in those flat files that have been around for about 20 years. So some of these fields include things like military, first generation, application data that we haven't had access to in the past. Grade changes, that's another one that we're really excited about because we only get the grades at the end of the term. And we know that there are several courses where the grades are still in progress at the time that report is due, so we don't pick up those grade changes currently. So we're really excited about this. It's been a big effort for our team and the data warehouse team over the last 2 years to think about how we need to collect and store information differently to feed these analytical dashboards, and we're making great progress. So stay on the lookout for new information related to those new data feeds. And then finally, Elizabeth is going to also show you how we've really designed these dashboards intentionally so that they can be used easily by our colleges. We want you to be able to print the dashboards, turn them into PDFs, access the data that is most valuable to you in an easy way. So she will show you how we've input some of that functionality into the dashboard data sets. So those were our big goals. We really try to stick to that roadmap. Anytime we have a decision that we're trying to make, we say, well, what do our guardrails say? What's on our roadmap? Are we making decisions that continue to support these goals? And we hope that you're seeing that we are and that we're staying true to those. So thank you. So for the next slide, I just wanted to make everyone aware that one of our guardrails is that we don't want colleges to be surprised about the information that goes out. So every time we release a new product, and we try to release new dashboards on a regular cadence, we were releasing about a collection about once a month for our first rollout period, and then we kind of got sidetracked because we were working on some other things that took more of our attention. And I think we're probably going to get back into that once a month, or at least once every other month release of new dashboard information. Hopefully you have received an email that looks like this from me, and it would say, hello, we're releasing new content. This is the description of that content. We give colleges a 2-week preview anytime we release a new dashboard. And then we also host a webinar where we walk you through the functionality of that dashboard. So during that preview period, the dashboard is not accessible on our website. We want colleges to take a look at it. We want them to ask us questions. We want them to come to the webinar and make sure that they're comfortable using the dashboard, because we don't want you to get a call from your president saying, I looked at this dashboard and I've got questions, and not have you prepared to answer those questions. So we hope that you're paying attention to these emails when they come out, so that you know when new content's going to be released, and that you're participating in the webinars. The way we announce that the dashboards are being released is we use the CC list. So if you are not receiving these emails, it means that you're not on one of these CC lists. So we send it to the basic skills, the continuing education, the student development administrators. If you're not receiving the emails, you need to talk to your IT department at your college to make sure that you are on one of these CC lists. And I've copied the ones that we send this to above. So if you have trouble with that, let us know, but definitely make sure that you're receiving these communications, because that is the way that we let you know that new content is coming. All right, let's continue on. So I just want to give you a brief overview of what we have available today. Our dashboards are organized by theme. And for those of you who have seen our dashboards for a little while, you may have noticed that these themes have changed in the last probably 3 or 4 months. We reorganized them based on some feedback that we got from the colleges. And this is, again, just an organizing framework to help you see where the information is at on this dashboard collection, because we now have so many dashboards. We want to kind of group them so that they're easy to find. So our first theme is our access theme. Inside our access theme, you'll see dashboards related to high school dual enrollment rate and post-secondary enrollment by high school and LEA. This dashboard has gotten a lot of interest because it contains that that information about students as they transition from high school to post-secondary. The information by LEA has been of great interest to our DPI colleagues as well. So this is a great place to just explore high schools that feed into your colleges, what those transition percentages look like. Now, when you go there, you might notice that the data is a little bit dated, and we agree that it is, and we are working with our partners to see if we can get an additional round of funding to do the matching that is required to populate the data. It seems like the use of this dashboard has gotten a lot of attention, and people are seeing the value of it, so we're hopeful that that will come to fruition really soon, and that we'll be able to do that next cohort of students and update those dashboards soon. Our next area is student program and course enrollment. What you'll notice here are your total head counts for all of your students. That's your unduplicated count for all students. Your curriculum, Con Ed, and basic skills head counts are their own dashboards, so you can do a deep dive into each of those academic levels. Curriculum program enrollments is our brand new dashboard. We just had our dashboard release about 2 weeks ago, and we had our webinar yesterday. Hopefully you were able to attend. If you weren't and are interested, Elizabeth will have the recording of that and can shoot that out to you if you just contact us. But that dashboard was just put on our website yesterday. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check that out, we encourage you to do so. And then we have information about curriculum course enrollments. We have been asked regularly about CE course enrollments, and one of the inputs to that process is the CE grading policy. We had a hard time, figuring out what success looked like in CE courses without that standard grading policy. So you can start to see how use of this information, questions about the dashboards, really is a feedback loop into our data governance process and our policy process. So now we're hoping that we'll be able to move forward and provide a similar dashboard in the CE course enrollment space because we'll be able to use the standard grades that have been put in this summer. All right, our next collection is around FTE, and we have 4 different dashboards here related to FTE. The actual and budget FTE is driven by information we get from our business office. It is what you have actually been funded on, and there's lots of details on understanding the difference between those two if you dive into that dashboard. And then we have separate dashboards for each of our instructional areas, curriculum, and then Con Ed and basic skills that allow you to do a deeper dive into instructional activity that happened during that current year. As Bill mentioned, we have a number of different state performance measures. The state performance measures are cross-listed in a few different places on our dashboards, but what you'll notice here is that we have provider items where you can do a deep dive for your institution, and we have peer comparison dashboards where you can do a deep dive of your institution compared to peers. If we have a moment at the end, Elizabeth may be able to demonstrate how those dashboards work. And then you'll see at the top here, we have an overall dashboard. We call these our summary dashboards, which is really a gateway into each of the state performance measures. So if you're looking for summary information across all 7 performance measures, that would be the place we'd encourage you to start. Next, we have our curriculum student progress and success. Again, here you'll see a number of performance measures represented again. We call this cross listing because you may not know which performance measures are focused on student progress and success or which performance measures are focused on basic skills. So we want you to be able to find this information in multiple places. So we have, with this new reorganization, started to cross list some of our dashboards so that it's easier for you to find. Here we also have additional information around curriculum courses, course characteristics, as well as student demographics by course. Next, we have our dashboards that are focused on transfer and employment outcomes. Here you'll see our PM7 as well as 2 of our federal performance measures, which focus on what happens to students once they leave our institutions. Where do they go? What are their workforce outcomes? What are their post graduation outcomes? We have a dedicated space also for basic skills. Again, you'll see cross-listing here for PM1, which Bill provided an overview for, but we also have a number of other dashboards that help you explore your basic skills data. We have a pre and post testing dashboard. We have dashboards focused on retention as well as participation. And then we have a high school equivalency dashboard, which focuses on all students in North Carolina who have taken the high school equivalency exam, one of the 3 high school equivalency exams that we offer. We have a whole section as well on high school dual enrollment. Dr. Katie Ball, who works on our team, who is working on a federal grant related to dual enrollment. She is the primary creator and contributor in this space and has really built out a nice collection of dashboards on our dual enrollment pathway programs. You can do deep dives into their course outcomes as well as their overall cohort analysis. Some of the KPIs that we have for our dual enrollment students are all nicely laid out across these dashboards. So if you are working with dual enrollment in your programs, we definitely encourage you to check out dashboards in this space. CTE Perkins is another focus area of ours. We do all of our federal reporting at the state level, so that includes basic skills as well as Perkins. So this is an area where we focus on those federal performance outcomes related to our Perkins programs. So you'll see the various performance outcomes that we have to report on here for Perkins. And then next and finally, we have faculty and staff information. This comes from our staff information report, which is submitted annually right now. We're trying to get a rewrite of that report and a more frequent update of that report. This has gotten a lot of attention in the last year, where we're looking at employee demographics as well as faculty salary comparisons. So we combine this with our IPEDS data to be able to offer insights into North Carolina versus the rest of the country. All right, so those are all of our themes and how we have organized our dashboards. I am going to, I believe, turn it over to Elizabeth now to talk to you about some other aspects of our dashboards.
Hi, everyone.
Including our usage measures. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Just a sound check. Can you hear me? Ashley, could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was having some technical difficulties earlier. I'm Elizabeth Stoddard. As Bill and Ashley said, I have been developing working with the rest of the team to develop many of these dashboards over the last 2.5 years that I've been here. And I'm going to spend the next little while taking you a little deeper into the dashboards and going over some tips and tricks and other things that you can find on the dashboards. So this slide is just some information about which of all of the dashboards that Ashley just kind of went through. These are just some usage metrics about which ones get a lot of views per week. We do track the number of views, the number of hits for each dashboard every week. And you can see here that our total enrollment dashboard is at the top of the list here. It gets about 300 views per week. And then right underneath that is our curriculum enrollment dashboard, gets 260 views a week. And then we have a couple of our instructional FTE, instructional activity dashboards that get a lot of activity. Our MSG rate performance measure dashboard is up here too. And our curriculum completion performance measure is up here as well. The second to last one on this list, course outcomes with demographics, is a great dashboard that gets down to the subject and the course level, and it details course success disaggregated by student demographic. So like looking at success of males and females, looking at success by race, ethnicity, by age range. And I do some work directly with faculty for that dashboard to allow them to kind of see the success rates in their courses and their subjects disaggregated by their student demographics. I wanted to spend the next little while talking about what we're calling tips and tricks. As Ashley mentioned, whenever we release a new dashboard, I do a webinar for that dashboard where I kind of walk through the whole dashboard and show the attendees how to use it and what they can find on the dashboard. And I walk through, basically every page. Hopefully some of you have attended some of those webinars. But I spend the least amount of time on this final page of every dashboard. Every dashboard ends on this metric details page, and we're seeing a screenshot of that now for our most recent dashboard, the curriculum program enrollment that we had the webinar for yesterday. So I usually don't spend very much time here, but this page does offer some interesting and helpful things. So I wanted to kind of dive into this page a little bit because it is contained on every single dashboard. So you should, you should just be aware of what you can learn from this page. So in addition to describing the dashboards, describing every tab of the dashboard, and listing out any calculations and definitions that are on this dashboard, we also list our data source. And the data sources are also listed on every single page of the dashboard, so that if you're printing it out, even if you just take one page out of the whole thing, you'll still have that data source, but it's listed more fully on this metric details page. And we've had colleges before say, oh, it was so helpful to have that data source listed here because that allowed me to go back and figure out, why my numbers don't look exactly like your numbers and where that discrepancy was coming from. So that's just something to know. We always do list the data source here on this last page. The dates or the time frames on the bottom of this this box here gives you some information about the recency, the currency of the data on the dashboard. It'll always tell you the date that the dashboard was last updated. So in this case, the screenshot's from a week ago, but the dashboard was last updated at the beginning of November. But the most recent data is what I think many people are interested in. And this particular dashboard, the most recent data is summer 2021. As Ashley talked about earlier, our dashboards are updated as often as we receive the data. So the most recent CCSR data that we have was from the summer, but we will be updating this dashboard and all of our enrollment dashboards again in February of 2022 when we get the fall 21 data. So that information is always listed here on the dashboards. The data downloads, I think, are very helpful, and I'm not sure that I'm trying more now to really emphasize that they're here, because I think that we sometimes get emails from people asking for the data that goes into a dashboard, and oftentimes that's already here and available. So any of our dashboards that don't have suppressed data include this data download. And we suppress data when the dashboard contains any sort of success measure, like course outcomes, or all of our performance measure dashboards, the data is suppressed. And that's because, in the interest of protecting student confidentiality and student privacy, when we have these, more sensitive data points, we don't show data for groups that have fewer than 20 people in them. So that's what we mean by suppression. But for like enrollment data, which is what this dashboard that I have the screenshot of, for enrollment data, we show everything. We don't suppress any data here. And when that is the case, then we also include these data downloads. And if you were to look at this dashboard and click on the link, any of these links, it would open as an Excel file, and it's basically just, it gives you all of the data that feeds the dashboard. So I know our IR folks at the colleges find this helpful, because they're the ones that kind of, or they're among the ones that kind of go in and do these additional analyses on our dashboard data. So this is what will allow people to do that, by being able to access the underlying data through these data downloads. This next thing that's highlighted here is just our email address for the RPM team. We encourage you to email us at this email address with any questions that you have about the dashboards, any feedback, any suggestions for new things you want to see either on a particular dashboard or on a new dashboard. We do get emails from college users a lot saying, I have an idea for a new dashboard. What do you think about this? And when we, sometimes it's an easy thing and we say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks for giving us that suggestion. And we can implement that right away. Other times it's a bigger thing that we have to kind of work with. But the best way to let us know is by emailing us at our email address listed here. And also for data requests, for any data, dashboard data that you can't get through the data download, or other types of student data, the best way to request that is also by emailing us as well. Some people put in tickets through ServiceNow for data requests, but our office, our PM office, isn't in the ticketing system. So those don't, they come to us eventually, but not immediately. So to avoid those delays, if you have requests for data or any sort of information about students, emailing us is the best way to get in touch. This one's a little hard to see, but all of our dashboards have this little toolbar across the bottom. Hopefully you can see that at the bottom of the screen. And one of the icons that's being highlighted in the red box right now is a download icon. And if you click on that, you get this little box that pops up, and this allows you to download the pages from the dashboard. This won't allow you to download the data from the dashboard, because we make those downloads available for you when we can in the data downloads section that I already talked about, but you can use this tool to download a PDF or a PowerPoint of the dashboard, and it can include like every single page from the dashboard, or it can include selected pages. And we put a lot of thought when we first started creating these dashboards, we put a lot of thought into the format of the dashboards to make them printer friendly. So if I have time at the end, I can show you, but if you were to download a PDF or a PowerPoint of any of these dashboards, it would come up as, it would fit into your slide, and it would look just like it does on the dashboard. And we hope that is an easy tool for you to just like take a couple pages that have pertinent information on it and put it into a slideshow that you might use at a meeting or something like that. So we did put a lot of thought into that, and we hope that this tool either already has been useful or can be useful for you moving forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about Power BI. I think Ashley and Bill both talked about Power BI a little bit. This is a new tool that we have. We just started using it this year, the beginning of the year. And Power BI is where we are developing dashboards that are behind a login. So the ones that Ashley and I have already been talking about are all public facing. Anyone with an internet connection can access them. And for that reason, that's why we have to suppress the data. That's why we can't have any student level information in there. But with Power BI, anything that we put in Power BI can and is behind a login. So we can control who sees any of the data in Power BI, and we can put the student level information in there and the unsuppressed data in there. So we are very happy that we have this tool and that we have this ability to give college users their unsuppressed student level data. This slide that I'm showing here, you already saw a similar version of it during Ashley's part, and these are the kind of the features that we are excited about and that we are kind of keeping in mind when we develop our dashboards in the Power BI space. The ones that are blue are the ones that are common to both our access controlled Power BI space and our public facing Tableau space. So with both of these sets of dashboards, we try to make them easy to use. We're definitely still using our consistent methodology for anything that we put out there. These dashboards are all interactive, and we're updating the data as timely as we can when we get it. What our Power BI dashboards have that our public facing dashboards don't are detailed data views. So we allow you to kind of drill into the data, get these student lists that include student ID, include the unsuppressed data, and then you can get I'll show you an example of this, but you can get like a list of students who were not successful on a particular performance measure. And if, you can get their IDs and follow up with them if if they're still like in an in progress cohort, and you still have the chance to get them to make them successful. We also offer in our Power BI space some focused report views that I'll show you some examples of, and the users can export the data here, the student level data, which we think, according to some of our IR folks who we work closely with, we think and hope that this is useful for them to be able to get that underlying student level data. One thing I'll mention here, I talked a lot about access controlled and behind a login. So right now, it's mostly only the data coordinators at the colleges who have access to Power BI and the basic skills data data managers or data coordinators for basic skills. So it hasn't been rolled out to every single person at every college yet. And I don't know if that's ever going to be the plan. But there are at least a handful of people from every college who do have access. So if you don't have access and you want it, you can work with your data coordinator to get access. And if you don't know who that is at your college, you can reach out to Ashley and me, and we can figure it out for you. Or you can, if you don't necessarily want to be able to get into Power BI, you can just work with your data coordinator to get the data, if that's something that would be helpful to you too. But the next few slides that I'm going to show you are just going to give you examples of what's in Power BI. So we have different kinds of reports here in Power BI. The one that I'm showing now is an example of a summary report. And this is for, this is a performance measure summary where you can kind of see for the school, you can see the their rates for each performance measure going back for 3 years and how they did in terms of the baseline and average and excellence reference levels. This is an example of kind of a customizable table that we make available in Power BI, and in Tableau, well, if this particular data in Tableau would not be suppressed, but a lot of our smaller schools have any of these numbers could be under 20, could be like 5 or 10. And in that case, in Tableau, we wouldn't show these numbers. But in Power BI, since it's behind a login, we allow college users to see everything. This is an example of the filters that we make available. So basically any student information that we have, we'll include it in here. We'll put it as a filter. You can really get down to like specific cohort or specific populations of students in your cohorts that you can track and compare success rates for. This might be a little hard to see because it's small, but this is just an example of the drill through capability. So you can say, okay, of this fall 2020 cohort in progress, they still have another couple of years to be successful. So let's reach out to these students who have not yet been successful on this performance measure. And you know, I'll drill through the data, or I'll get their detailed data, which has their student ID in it, and then we can reach out and try to help them or see what they need. This is another dashboard. This is our basic skills overview dashboard. And the next couple screenshots that I'll show you from this dashboard are just some examples of what we are doing with federal performance monitoring in the basic skills space. So we worked closely with our internal basic skills staff here to come up with these kind of report card metrics. What are the most important things for basic skills folks as they're monitoring their performance throughout the year? And we put it all on this kind of overview page. We have these over time views, so you can track student enrollment and performance over time and compare back to previous years. We'd have these disaggregations by a number of different demographics. We have some course level data in here as well. And then that's the last screenshot of the different types of basic skills views that we have. There are a number of different, there are a number of other pages in this dashboard, and hopefully the basic skills folks that are on the line might be somewhat familiar with this already. But if not, and you want more information, you can definitely let us know. This is just kind of going over some of the delivery strategies that we've come up with for Power BI, for anything that we put in Power BI. We're trying to balance like making everything available and user friendly with basically workload, and having enough resources to get it in here and update it on a regular basis. So so for, for future reports that we put in Power BI, sometimes you might just see the data, the raw data, which is what what the screenshot in the top left corner is showing. Just very basic tables, the Power BI filters, nothing fancy. And then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, in the top right corner here is what I just showed you for the basic skills federal monitoring report. And these are very, very detailed. There are a lot of bells and whistles, many, many pages. And so that's kind of, like I said, the other end of the spectrum. And then we have kind of a hybrid approach, which is what we've been doing for our performance measures, where there's some interactivity and functionality, definitely give you the ability to get down to your underlying data, but not, not too much, not 30 pages, but more like 2 or 3 or 4 pages, and on the more simple side. So that's just to say that going forward, if you all are working in Power BI or working with your IR folks, you might see any of these kind of strategies if you're looking at our Power BI reports. Does JW have a question? Do you have a question?
Yeah,
I know
sure
I only
do,
have 3
Elizabeth.
minutes.
That's all right. We do have one question in the chat, and that's about access to the Power BI. So, how does a person who maybe is here today, how do they gain access? Do they work with that data coordinator? Is that who it is? And who's the approving authority, I think is part of the question.
Yep, thank you for bringing that up. Sorry that I didn't say that before, but the approving authority is your data coordinator at your college, and they will have to put in the request for you. It goes through ServiceNow, but the data coordinator does the whole thing. So you should reach out to your data coordinator. And again, if you don't know who that is, Ashley and I can tell you. You should reach out to them, tell them that you want Power BI, and then they'll have to put in the ticket through ServiceNow, and they know it. We've had trainings, both our team and the data warehouse team has had sessions with the data coordinators, so they know the steps that they have to take, but they just need to know who needs or wants access to Power BI. So I hope that answered the question or was helpful.
Yes, I think so.
If there are any other questions, please interrupt. And I know that I only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to try to go quickly, but I'm happy to stick around if people have additional questions. This is showing the common disaggregations that we use on our dashboards. We do, we disaggregate when we can by student demographics, student characteristics, academic characteristics, location, and so we try to do we try to give you as much as we can. In the bottom right corner, that's where you can see a list of future disaggregations that we know you want and we know you need, and we're just at this point we're just trying to get the data. We don't have good data for all of these future disaggregations: high school GPA, first gen, military veteran status, financial need, high school. And so we are working with our IT office, with our data warehouse team to get this data so that we can give it back to you. For the rest of the year, for the rest of 2021, we are working on a couple more program program level dashboards for you. So the program enrollment one we just released yesterday, or we just put on our website yesterday. We're doing a program comparison dashboard, a program monitoring dashboard that we're excited about. We're working on some financial aid dashboards and some staff salary, or a dashboard that's looking at staff salary comparisons. Those will all be public facing. In Power BI for our access control dashboards, we'll be working on an FTE report and a tuition remission report. And those, we plan to have those all out by the end of the year. And then next year we have some more plans. So we'll be working on some credit accumulation metrics, which, and if you're familiar with the PDP, they in the PDP dashboards, they also look at credit accumulation. So we're hoping to add to that. We have some graduation demographics data views, the demographics of your graduates and students who earn credentials. Ashley already talked about the course enrollments on the basic skills and workforce CE side. We're looking at another faculty dashboard, looking at faculty retention, dashboards surrounding the strategic planning KPIs that will be associated with the new strategic plan for that I think is planned for next year. Some more dashboards in Power BI looking at Perkins and enrollment and course success and more graduation. And then Ashley also talked about our nightly data that we're getting in and how we're working with some colleges in using that data kind of on the enrollment management side. So we've been working on some prototypes for dashboards that will be showing daily enrollment, daily registrations, course fill rate. So we are very excited about all of these upcoming dashboards and projects as well. This is kind of the future beyond next year. We have a lot of ideas in our parking lot, a lot of cars in our parking lot, and we're working with folks like you and presidents and IR people and internal system office folks to kind of figure out where to go next and what will have the biggest impact and what is the most needed. So we'll be picking ideas out of our parking lot based on what we hear and what we know from working with our stakeholders. And that's all that I have. I'm sorry that I went over, but I'm happy to stick around and answer questions or go more deeply into any of the dashboards if you'd like that.
Thank you very, very much, Elizabeth and Ashley. We definitely appreciate your report. And because of the time, unless there's a question that's just burning in somebody's mind, we'll start slowly bringing things to a close. Are there any questions? Not hearing any questions. And so before we end though, not only did I want to make sure I thanked the RPM team and Ashley and Elizabeth and Bill, but I put in the chat box the UNC system dashboard. They're not as good as we are, right? However, they do have some very good transfer data that I wanted to make sure you knew was available to you. And so that is in the chat box there, and I'll show it here on the screen very quickly. Once you follow that link, then you can click on the transfer students here, and there might be some information there that would be helpful for you as you evaluate your transfer programs. So I'll pause one more time to see if there's any questions for our presenters today.
And GW, I will email you these slides.
Excellent.
So that you can send them out.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time this morning. We will come back again at 1 o'clock. It's the same Zoom link. And when we come back at 1 o'clock, we'll be ready for some breakout rooms and some activities. You guys enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.